Every legend begins with a wound, and the story of Candyman is not just a ghost tale whispered in dark bathrooms. It is a history carved from injustice, hatred, and the kind of cruelty that stains generations. Today, people say you can summon him by standing in front of a mirror and repeating his name 5 times. Most treat it as a dare, a thrill, a harmless test of courage. Yet most people don't realize that rituals like this didn't come from nowhere. Across the United States during the 19th and early 20th century, mirror rituals were part of African American folklore and Southern superstition. Mirrors were believed to be thresholds, places where spirits lingered because reflections trapped pieces of the soul. Children were told not to stare too long into them at night. Women covered mirrors in funerals to keep spirits from returning. Breaking a mirror was more than bad luck. It was an invitation. When Candyman's legend grew, the mirror became the perfect doorway, not because of magic, but because trauma needs a reflection. It needs a surface to imprint itself on. And a mirror never forgets a face. But before Candyman was a specter, he was a man, Daniel Robitaille, an artist whose only crime was love. If you want more stories like this creeping into your feed, like and subscribe. Stick with us till end. Daniel was born in 1870, the son of a formerly enslaved man who rose to rare prosperity after inventing a device used in the leather industry. This success gave Daniel opportunities most Black Americans of that era could only dream of. He was educated, well-spoken, and gifted with remarkable artistic talent. To understand how rare this was, remember, in 1870, the Civil War had ended only 5 years earlier. Millions of Black Americans were navigating freedom in a country that did not want them to succeed. Literacy among formerly enslaved people was under 20%. Violence was constant. Education for Black children was sabotaged or outright forbidden in many states. Yet Daniel Palin, brilliant, soft-spoken, and determined, rose above barriers designed to break people. His father's small invention created something unheard of, generational hope, and in a world that offered almost none. Daniel's talent became both a blessing and a curse. His paintings caught the attention of the white elite. Aristocrats sought him out to immortalize their children on canvas, praising his eye for detail and the tenderness of his strokes. But admiration is not the same as acceptance. To them, he was talented, but never equal. Polite nods hid hostility. Smiles masked prejudice. Daniel lived in a fragile space, welcomed for his skill, rejected for his skin. He learned early on that the same people who called him gifted would move their children away from him in the street. He learned that compliments could turn into slurs the moment he spoke too confidently. And yet, Daniel painted with grace. He captured innocence, joy, and softness, emotions he rarely got to experience freely. Some of his surviving sketches, preserved in private collections, show families smiling at one another. Some show children with flowers. But the most haunting pieces are the ones he never finished. Half-formed faces, abandoned as if he felt something watching him, urging him to stop. Everything changed the day he met her, the daughter of a wealthy landowner whose portrait he had been hired to paint. She admired him, not just his art, but his gentleness, his mind, his presence. What began as a painter's session slowly grew into lingering glances, secret letters, and forbidden meetings in garden shadows. It was a love that defied an unforgiving world. It said she would sneak out with pressed flowers tucked into her books, leaving them at Daniel's door like small confessions of affection. He would respond with charcoal sketches of her hands, her smile, her silhouette in the morning light. Their love existed in stolen minutes, in the rustle of dresses behind hedges, in whispers exchanged through cracked windows. In another time, they might have married, grown old together, painted their home in warm tone. But their world was not built for love like theirs. Their world punished it. When she became pregnant, their secret shattered. News spread like poison. For the elite, it was not love, it was scandal, and in their eyes, a crime that needed punishment. The young woman's father gathered a mob consumed by rage and shame. Daniel was dragged from his home, beaten and bound, condemned without trial. What they did next was not punishment, it was torture. Lynchings were often public spectacles. Crowds of hundreds sometimes gathered, children among them. People brought food. Photographers captured the horror and sold the images as postcards. The mob that took Daniel was no different. Reports from that region mentioned torchlight, cheering, even music. They wanted to make an example. They wanted to erase him so brutally that no one of his skin color would dare look at a white woman again. The cruelty wasn't random. It was deliberate, ritualistic, designed to break the soul before it broke the body. His right hand, the hand that created beauty, was hacked off and replaced with a rusty hook to prolong his suffering. His body was smeared with honey, drawing swarms of bees that descended upon him in a furious cloud. Their stings tore through his skin as the mob laughed and applauded, watching his agony with sick satisfaction. Honey and blood soaked the ground beneath him. Daniel Robitaille's screams eventually faded, but the cruelty that ended his life ignited something darker. Some witnesses claimed that in his final moments, Daniel stayed silent. Others said he whispered something, a name, a promise, or a curse. No one knows for certain, but everyone agreed on one detail. The bees didn't stop. Even after Daniel collapsed, they crawled across his face, burying themselves in the wounds as if tasting injustice itself. From that moment, a legend began. People whispered that Daniel's spirit would not rest, that on hot nights his cries could be heard riding on the hum of bees. Some claimed to see a tall figure with torn flesh and a hook where his hand once was. Fear grew, and the story slowly transformed. The name Candyman emerged, a bitter, ironic reminder of the honey used in his execution. Folklorists believe the name shifted because communities often transform horror into something easier to tell, something children could whisper without fully understanding the truth beneath it. Candyman sounded almost playful, but behind the sweetness was a story rotten with cruelty. With each generation, the nickname became a mask, hiding Daniel's identity even as his presence grew stronger in the collective memory. Over decades, the myth spread across the country, particularly through marginalized communities where violence, racism, and fear were part of daily life. Parents warned their children not to play with mirrors. Teenagers dared each other to say his name, treating trauma as entertainment. But beneath the game was a history, buried in pain. Newspaper records from the time of Daniel's lynching were cold, sanitized. They wrote of community justice, ignoring the barbarity of what happened. Daniel's real name disappeared from the archives, replaced by whispers of Candyman. In that silence, the myth grew strong. What the papers didn't mention was that several witnesses who participated in the mob later died under strange circumstances. One found with his mirror shattered inward, another swarmed by bees despite it being winter. Locals called it coincidence, but nobody hung a mirror uncovered in their home for years afterward. As the 20th century progressed, strange accounts began to surface. Workers heard metallic scraping in empty barns. Women saw distorted figures in mirrors when they were alone. Victims were found with curved wounds, as if carved by a hook. Police investigations in the 1950s and 60s quietly recorded bizarre cases, bodies found in locked bathrooms, mirrors shattered from the inside out. No culprit, no explanation, only the buzzing of bees reported by neighbors. Researchers soon realized Candyman was more than a ghost story. He was a reflection of America's racial wounds, a spirit born not from imagination, but from memory. In neighborhoods plagued by poverty and neglect, Candyman became both a warning and a symbol. Social workers in Chicago in the 1970s noted that children from lower-income housing projects often spoke about Candyman the same way children from wealthier suburbs spoke about the boogeyman. Only one difference: the boogeyman was fiction. Candyman felt personal, real. A protector to some, a punishment to others. A story that grew louder whenever injustice flared. For some, he represented vengeance against the oppression they lived every day. For others, he was the monster society created, a reminder of cruelty that refuses to be forgotten. The 1980s, areas like Cabrini Green in Chicago became ground zero for Candyman sightings. Residents spoke of shadows moving in broken hallways, of buzzing at night behind thin apartment walls. A 1983 police report described a woman found in her bathroom, her abdomen slashed, her mirror shattered, her apartment door untouched. The word Candyman was never written in the official file, but every neighbor whispered it. Journalists who tried to investigate were met with resistance, not from residents, but from officials who feared the panic such stories could cause. Still, more cases appeared. Hooks grazing concrete walls, bees clustering around sinks, names etched faintly into mirrors as if by an invisible hand. Every time investigators tried to debunk the stories, new ones arose. It was as if the legend refused to stay buried. By 1992, the legend hit global audiences through the film Candyman. While many dismissed it as Hollywood fiction, folklore scholars argued that the movie mirrored real testimonies, real fears, and real histories that had been ignored. After its release, reports of sightings surged, as if the story itself had reawakened something that never truly died. Throughout the 2000s, patterns appeared across multiple cities: hook-shaped wounds, bee infestations in sealed rooms, disappearances linked to mirror rituals. Psychologists called it mass hysteria. Sociologists called it cultural trauma. But witnesses insisted it was real, every one of them describing the same figure: a tall man in a dark coat, hollow eyes, bees crawling from open wounds, honey dripping from his mouth. Whether hallucination or haunting, their stories matched too perfectly to ignore, and always the same detail. It began with the mirror. A portal, researchers said, to the psyche. A doorway, believers said, to the dead. Candyman became more than a myth. He became an egregore, a spirit fed by belief, strengthened by fear, and sustained by injustice. And in modern times, belief spreads faster than ever. Social media challenges resurfaced the ritual. Teenagers filming themselves whispering his name, desperate for a viral scare. Most videos ended with laughter, but some ended abruptly. One clip from 2019 shows a girl chanting softly, her reflection glitching in the dim light before the screen cuts to black. Her account was deleted the next day. Friends said she refused to talk about what happened, but she never used mirrors again. And at the core of it all remained one truth: Candyman was Daniel Robitaille, a man whose life was stolen, whose love was punished, whose death was soaked in hatred. His story lingers because the wounds that created him have never healed. So the question remains: is Candyman a ghost, a psychological projection, a symbol of racial trauma, or something that exists between all three? Maybe he is a tapestry woven from all of it: grief, injustice, rage, memory, fear, longing, and the human need for stories that explain why the world can be so cruel. Or maybe he is exactly what witnesses claim: a presence that you do not summon, but awaken through the act of remembering. A voice that speaks only when the world repeats its old sins. Perhaps the answer lies in the silence before you speak his name. Perhaps in the chill before the buzzing begins. Perhaps in the reflection staring back at you from the mirror. Because some legends don't fade, some wounds don't heal, and some names once spoken never truly leave you. And maybe, just maybe, he is listening. If this mystery has you hooked, hit subscribe, because the next one is even stranger.